the last packaging class that I taught, I said, basically, nobody's going to fail this class unless you just don't show up. Two, you can ace this class if you...
Welcome. Thank you for joining us today here on Packaging Unboxed. I am your host, Grace Lee, and I'm here with the lovely and talented Evelio Mattos. We're going to talk about some of the burning questions that recent grads such as myself have. Do I need to give an intro about myself?
Sure.
My name is Grace Lee. I just recently graduated from the Packaging Identities and Systems Design graduate program at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. Let's hear some stuff about our wonderful guest, Evelio.
Thanks. And you called me lovely, so that's really nice. All right. So this is cool. I'm super stoked. So you just graduated and you had some questions, which you shot over. And I'm like, you know what? Let's make this into an episode because I think you're probably not the only person with these questions. So let's answer them. I'll answer them as best as I possibly can.
All right. So why don't we get to know our wonderful guest? So one of my questions for just getting to know you was, can you highlight a few projects that have been really impactful and innovative in your career? Because you've been with packaging for the longest time.
Yeah, I have been in packaging for the longest time ever. A couple projects that really stand out to me. I think one is the very first project I did. I was working with a team. They were launching new software, and this is back in the old days when software came in actual boxes. And they're like, we just need we just needed a box design. Can you prototype something? So what I did is I took an Adobe box and I tore it apart. Then I created a die line from that, and then I built it again. And then I started realizing like the way that packaging worked. And pretty much at that point, I was hooked. So even though it wasn't like super innovative or amazing, it was like the first real pack that I made that I physically got on store shelves and realized like I really love packaging versus the digital and like the print stuff that I was doing previously. Cause like that stuff doesn't live as long as packaging does. So at that point I kind of fell in love with that. Some of the other projects that kind of stand out, I'd say one would be a program I did with Lady Gaga and Barney's New York. That was fun. I think the part that stood out to me for that was they only had a couple of weeks. So it was like a last minute thing, but they wanted as much innovation as you could possibly cram into a short amount of time. So one, I don't like to say no. So just taking on that challenge was pretty awesome. And then being able to work with that team and deliver and seeing it through social or everywhere else, that was pretty awesome and exciting. There's like these there's projects that happen throughout your career that while you're in them, it's like so fast and everything kind of fits together. And even if there's challenges, you're like, we'll get through this. And just the momentum of the excitement gets you through the project. And then that kind of gets you through like another year of maybe not as exciting work, because not everything that you do is going to be as fun and exciting. Then there's been other stuff that I've been able to create with Tesla and fashion brands and Google, and I love all of it. I love packaging. So
yeah, I get that.
I spent time with the die line. Yeah, I live and breathe packaging is pretty much
it. Did you mentioned that you work with like a bunch of different like sectors. Do you have a favorite one? Like there's Lady Gaga, which is I assume like crazy, super experiential, like weird packaging, and then there's Tesla and stuff, which is way more, I guess, not that side of things.
I think I love it all, really. And I think what I enjoy about all of it is the power that packaging has to make a decision for the consumer, to help a consumer make a decision. The power that it has to build a brand. With great power comes great responsibility. And the responsibility side is the sustainability side. So now it's like, all right, we can, we've been able to create packaging that helps consumers make a decision. Now we need to make packaging that does that, plus helps educate them on the end of life and how to recycle and how to do things on the back end for sustainability. Yeah, there's not one sector that I enjoy. I love food packaging. I don't do food packaging, but I love it. I do, fashion, retail, tech, but yeah, there's not one sector that I would say, oh, I don't want to do
that. That's enough about you. But
perfect. I hate talking about myself.
Well, you are a big part of the industry, and you mentioned, being client facing and having to trying to focus in on where the client wants to go. But have you ever had an experience where you had to persuade a client to go for more things like more sustainable solutions? Because I know you're very big on or open about sustainability.
So one thing I'll tell you is I love being client facing. I love interacting with the clients, whether they're in procurement, in design, in finance, wherever they fit within the client's organization. I love being a part of that. I love having that conversation with them. And I think, one, as a designer, as an emerging designer, the more comfortable you are in having those conversations, kind of learning a little bit about finance, learning about the procurement teams and the people that you would be designing for and with is super helpful. A lot of times young designers focus on just the designing part and being behind the computer and not necessarily being the person that's going to present the concept. Like they get terrified to present the concept to the client because they're afraid of feedback or how they're going to react to it. But I think the more that you put yourself out there, the better you're going to be, because that makes a designer more valuable, right? If you can present your work, if you can speak in front of an audience and explain and help someone understand the decisions that you made, makes you more valuable, because design is sales. And I think a lot of times designers are like, I'm not a salesperson. I'm a graphic designer. I'm a packaging designer. But your idea is not going to get made if you don't sell it. And if you're creating it and you're handing it off to an account manager to then go and sell it, or a creative director to then sell it, like you need to be a part of that conversation so that when there's a question, you can be the one that answers it and not let somebody else do it. I think that's one area that I think design education kind of misses, is helping push designers to be more, get out of their comfort zone and speak more about their work and defend it. But going back to the question of helping a client change their mind or trying to help them be more sustainable, I don't help clients be more sustainable in that sense. And I think it's weird for me to say that, but like I literally just had a call yesterday with a brand and they're like, okay, we want to be more sustainable. That's our goal. What materials should we be using? Should we be using this one or this one? And the first thing, and it was like an entire team that I was speaking to, from, top level like management to distribution and procurement and a couple other people within the team. And it's not this is what I think. It was really what's the right decision for the brand, right? Sustainability means something different to everyone. And what does it mean to your brand? Does it mean that you're reducing your carbon? Is that something that you've targeted? Does it mean that you are focusing on recyclability? Are you focusing on the materials? Like what are we trying to achieve? Because I can tell you the benefits of each of those materials. And I kind of went down the list of what the trade-offs are. If you choose this material or this direction, here are the trade-offs that you're going to make. And if you choose this direction, here are the trade-offs that you're going to make. And there's never like a nice overlapping, feathering of goals and decisions. There's always a trade-off. Either something going to cost you more, it's going to create more carbon, it'll be more difficult to recycle. Like there's always a trade-off. And it's just a matter of like what makes the most sense for the brand and what can they stand behind. Then once we kind of narrow down what that is, we then optimize the packaging to be smaller or to be larger in some cases, right? So if your packaging is too small, it's not going to get recycled. So sometimes you actually have to make packaging bigger to be accepted for recycling, which sounds completely counterintuitive. But bigger packaging is going to cost more. It's going to cost more to ship. And then consumers are going to be like, oh, there's too much air in this box. I wish the box was a lot smaller. And it's like, okay, well, if we make it smaller, then you can't recycle it. It's like, what are the goals here? And how do you educate the consumer around those things? So I don't necessarily try to drive the conversation in one direction. It's more about asking and providing the information to help them understand, here are all the options and here are the trade-offs within each. What makes the most sense for the brand? And then we can kind of back out and develop packaging around those goals and then educating them along the way. All right, let's take a quick second to talk about idpdirect.com. Go right to that website, download the design guides, the sustainability guides, the recyclable icon guide, which basically lists out all the different icons. It gives them to you in vectors. You can drop them right into your artwork right now, today, and go right into production. All right, back to the pod.
So with changing consumer behavior, like people now care about whether or not you're doing good for the environment, and also like I want my stuff in 2 day shipping. So how do you talk to your clients about that kind of stuff?
No, I think that's all part of the same conversation of the trade-offs of creative, of the opportunities. Again, if we move something smaller or larger or change these materials, like these are the things that can be impacted. And it goes into like, okay, well, it's going to take longer to pack this. It's going to be too big. So now it's going to be, 4-day instead of 2-day shipping in order to balance those costs. I think all of that just rolls back into those trade-offs. Right? And as a creative, a lot of times we don't think that far ahead. We're just like, okay, it's got to, it's going to be a green tape measure with a red logo. It's like, okay, well, if we do this green and red logo, then, how's that going to impact everything else down the road? So really kind of just thinking as far out as we possibly can and addressing some of those solutions.
So the second half of that question is more, how do you stay ahead of those changes? And for you, because you've been in so many parts of the packaging process, from like manufacturing to design to, client facing, how do you stay ahead of that?
I think that is the way that I stay ahead of that, is by being involved in all these different areas. You learn like what matters to the procurement side, right? What matters to the procurement side at one brand is probably what matters to the procurement side at another brand, right? And the procurement side is those are the people that are making the decision to buy this design. They're not deciding to buy the visual. They've just had the decision come down for them where they have to buy new creative, or they have to buy new packaging, or they have to buy whatever. They have a certain budget that they've got to hit, a certain volume that they have to produce, right? And then you're also talking to creatives who are then designing, and they're trying to design something that's going to be way outside of the budget that they've been given. So you've got team A who's trying to manage creatives and keep them cheap. And you've got creatives who are trying to design like amazing stuff that's not going to fit within the budget. So you learn what matters to the creatives and how to help them through production, whether it's like, okay, we can do this if we automate it, or we can do this if we change these materials, or, kind of helping guide them. Then you've got like the true finance who's like managing the overall thing. And then you also have like distribution, how's the product fulfilled? What kind of, what's the consumer experience going to be like? All these different aspects of it. So by being involved in these in the client discussions, you learn again, like how does your creative impact all of these areas of the business, so that you can kind of think further and further out. It's like, okay, if I do this, it's going to go beyond the budget of this team. Or if I do this, maybe the marketing team won't be able to promote it in these ways, or they will be able to promote it in these ways. So you're giving them benefits at each one of these stages. And you almost act like a therapist for the client, where you're helping kind of these teams that don't typically collaborate because they're always at odds, right? One team wants to spend more, one team has to spend less. Those are based on their individual KPIs. So those don't necessarily align. But at the end of the day, the one thing that does align for them is like, how do they sell more faster for less? And if your design can help them do that, then you can bring all those teams together. And that, again, it goes back to like design education. It's like you don't necessarily learn how to bring those people together or how to communicate your design to achieve all these different goals. And the more that you put yourself out there, the faster you'll learn that. And I think the better of a designer you'll be, only because you'll be able to sell your work in easier. And all of a sudden you're the person that's easiest to work with because you understand the needs of each of these brands.
Yeah, we definitely did not learn that. So you're right on the money about us not being taught how to do that very well.
No, well, I think people expect creatives to learn that on the job, right? And that's, you do. But a lot of times designers are like, well, that's not my job. I'm going to focus on the creative. And it takes a handful of years before somebody gets kind of out of that comfort zone. So the faster you can jump in, like, no, I want to be in the client meeting. I want to hear from the very beginning, so you can hear what all these different people are concerned with.
So is that one of your pieces of advice for new grads, is just be in all the meetings, just listen to every sales meeting and all that?
If finding your spec data is a wild goose chase around your office, you've got a data problem.
SpecRite is the only cloud-based management specification solution that every brand needs. Because if you don't spec right, you'll spec wrong. Yeah, from the beginning, right? So even before, if possible, depending on who you're working with, it's like, if you can get in there before proposal, get in there and listen, because you're going to hear some of the craziest stuff. Either they've got like a super limited budget, or they don't necessarily have a target of where they're going. But you'll also hear kind of the challenges that they're facing, or the challenges that they've faced. So when it's time to actually get to work, you've got this stuff in the back of your mind that may not make it to the brief, right? And you have these things in your mind, and that'll help kind of inform your work. And then when you go to present it, you're like, I heard this, and that's why this solution kind of addresses that thing. And it's like, how do you tie your work back to the challenges that the brands have is always important.
So with your vast experience in all like these different areas of the industry, are there any big emerging trends that you think new creatives or new professionals should be preparing for?
Yeah, I think the big one, the hot topic right now everybody's talking about is AI. I guess my question for you is, did you spend any time discussing AI at Pratt?
So funnily, we did, but it was it was just that it is happening. I remember that they were having discussions about buying Midjourney subscriptions for like students to be able to use. We never got it, but hopefully next year they'll have it. But I do remember some of my professors would send articles about AI in the packaging industry and how established designers are using it or like incorporating it into their workflow. So that was about the extent of it, but really it was just like AI is a thing now in design, and then we wouldn't talk about it much.
See, I think that's a huge miss, and the reason is it is happening. It's changing the industry. It's changing a lot of different industries. We're seeing text to video, and I think we're seeing chat. We're seeing Apple kind of launching AI into their phones coming up here soon. Like AI is pretty much in everything. My toaster has AI. It's like if you're not educating the creatives on this new thing is happening, and say a year ago or a year and a half ago, you would have had an opportunity to start testing out Midjourney through a program at school. It's like, okay, this is the way that it works. Here's the way that you can build maybe your own MLM. Here's the way that you can prompt and kind of work through all the iterations and evolutions that the different platforms have kind of gone through. I think today, more creatives graduating would be able to benefit from using AI. Now, how would they benefit? I know a lot of designers that are using AI to concept, just throw things out. Like, I'm sure you're sitting there, you can look at like a brief, and in your mind, you can kind of picture, okay, well, what if we do this? Or what if we do that? You have all these different scenarios of where you can take creative. What if you can just take those and just throw them, at your computer and have your computer come back with like what that could potentially look like? It's not going to be perfect. It's not exactly what you had in mind, but it gives you enough to reflect on. And you can do, 50, 60, 100 iterations of this in minutes and be able to then go, okay, these are terrible ideas. These are, mediocre ideas. These are elements that I like from some of these ideas. And then, here are some bangers that look like something we can work from. And now you can kind of start putting together your concept still in AI, and then going back to a team that you're working with and go, okay, here's kind of, here's the brief. Here's where this is going. Is this correct? Does this visual deliver on this brief? And if it does, is this the right direction that we should be going? Right. So you're still haven't created anything, but you're being able to have conversations at a faster pace than interpreting a brief, creating multiple options, kind of going down that path of actually spending the time to, hunt for the right typeface, hunt for the right imagery, and kind of piecing things together, and then coming back and saying, okay, here's 3 options. They're like, yeah, I know that we've seen it. This isn't the direction we want to go. Right. And it's like, there are agencies now that are using AI throughout their entire process. that are moving much faster. And I think creatives that aren't using it today are going to miss out a little bit. Is there going to be some backlash at some point? I'm sure there is, where the people want human, the entire human process, and they'll probably pay more for that. But until we get to that point, it's going to be a little bit harder to compete in the market to get a job if you're not able to use AI. Now, does that mean that if you don't know how to use AI, you can't get a job? Absolutely not. But I think if you're going in to an agency, you're like, oh yeah, here's the way that I've incorporated AI into my workflow, and the agency doesn't necessarily have anybody doing that, all of a sudden you become an asset to them in a way that maybe somebody else that doesn't use it can become.
Which ones do you see that designers are using most? Because there's so many now.
Yeah, there's a ton. I think people have to kind of figure out what works for them and choose. So I know Brian Sykes, he picks and chooses a bunch and kind of tests them all. He's doing some really cool stuff with Firefly now. He's creating stuff in Midjourney, but then kind of moving it to Firefly. Firefly is doing, some pretty cool stuff now. It was pretty lame to begin with, but it's working out. Yeah, it's like terrible, but it's doing some really cool stuff now. How do you begin testing and using in a way that you can then show in your portfolio? Like, here's kind of my concept process. Like, you've got sketches, you've got AI images, and then you've got the final piece, which is something that you created yourself by kind of going through this process. For an agency to see AI in your workflow, the benefit for them is speed, right? An agency has to make money. As much as it's all about the design and the work, they've got to be profitable. And if they can bring on a designer that can work 2 or 3 times faster than somebody else, that is a profit center for them.
So AI is obviously, changing kind of the landscape of packaging and design, and also just everything at the moment. But what other emerging trends have you seen that really changed the conversation in the packaging industry in the past year?
One, there's a lot of growth in new D2C brands, new food companies. People are launching products left and right. That part's exciting. With a lot of this all new packaging that's happening, all new products requires all new packaging. With all this new packaging, we're seeing a lot of great design, and trends are shifting really quick. We're also, I'd say one person go out and follow, I think, is Andrea Hernandez. She does snack shots. And she posts the latest in food packaging, which is crazy because you're seeing tons of beautiful design, some not so beautiful, but you're seeing some a ton of new creative coming from young designers, startups that are just doing it themselves. And that, I think, is kind of cool. Before, I'd say 10 years ago, you weren't seeing as many brands pop up. It was always the big brands with new redesigns or a new product, but it wasn't my neighbor's building a pistachio butter company, and it looks amazing. So I think I think people feeling more entrepreneurial and kind of launching new products at this pace is kind of helping change design because it's moving so fast. But yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest thing. And then I think people are kind of building their community around design is something new that's also kind of changing. So Andrea has a newsletter she sends out, I think, every day, and includes stories on the brands themselves and the design and how it's kind of being received by the market. You also then, by seeing all this, you also see a lot of copycats, which is crazy. You're like, oh, here's a competitor and they look exactly the same, except they're pink. So that's something else you typically wouldn't see before. You're like, oh man, these guys are copying, ripping somebody else off.
So bringing it back to the recent grads and the anxieties of new designers, what strategies do you think recent grads can use to more effectively showcase their creativity and innovation in their portfolios? Like you mentioned, incorporating AI.
The last packaging class that I taught, I said, basically, nobody's going to fail this class unless you just don't show up. 2, you can ace this class if you post your work on LinkedIn and get 1,000 interactions by the end of the semester. Not a single person posted to LinkedIn. So how do you stand out? Posting on LinkedIn. I think that's one way as a student, as a young designer, to stand out and get noticed is to post on LinkedIn. In terms of like the work that you're doing, I had the class from day one, pick 2 or 3 brands that they would want to work at, 2 or 3 agencies that they would want to work at. And then the entire program was kind of curtailed around those brands for each student. So they were designing packaging for that particular brand. The reason being,
Wow.
they could then design and post that on LinkedIn, tag the brand, tag the creative director at Pepsi, at whoever, the designers within that, and just say, as a young designer or a student, there's something that you can say that I can't say, which is, hey, I'm a student. I'd love to get your feedback on this. And somebody at the brand that sees, hey, I'm a student, is going to go, oh, let me dedicate a little bit of time to this person because they're at that stage in their career. I can't go, hey, I'm an old guy designing for your brand. I want your feedback. To be like, oh, forget this guy. So like, in the old days, you would put together a portfolio. It was like a physical piece, and you'd show it, and you'd kind of flip through these pages. You'd mail it. They'd mail it back to you. Then it was like, all right, well, do you have a website? And you'd have like this terrible website, and people flip through it. Today, people will decide whether they want to hire you or not based on your social. So even before you apply, what's your social tell? What's that say about you? When your resume hits, first thing someone's going to do is Google you, look up, your LinkedIn, look up your Instagram, kind of go through and kind of get a sense of who you are, what you've said. Is this somebody that's going to fit within the group that we have here? What's important to them? I saw there was a trend going on social where it was the worst trend ever. And it's like, this is who you think is your pediatrician. And it was like the picture of the doctor or the nurse. And then it's like, this is who I really am. And then they were drunk at a bar, like ripping and roaring. And you're like, oh my God, that's like the stupidest thing ever. Like, I don't want that guy, treating my kid or same thing. It's like, this is the designer you think you've hired, and they're like crazy and wild. It's like, no, that's not what people are looking for. And that's what people are going to find. So first thing, obviously have a great portfolio, but that's not enough. How do you present yourself on social? And LinkedIn is the place to be right now, not necessarily Instagram, but definitely go through your Instagram. To all the students, I always say, look, if I go through your Instagram and I do one scroll and I see pictures of drunk, bikinis, sexy selfies in the mirror, like all that stuff, like you're out, like it's just, yes, it is your personal social. You can do whatever you want. That's like the reflection of who you are in the eyes of somebody that's hiring, and they don't have time to get to know you. So they're like flipping through, like, who is this person? If it's all design, you can have your personal locked and then have like a more professional one that's public, but just being really considerate of that stuff. But LinkedIn, I think, is the key place, and anything that you have in your portfolio, tying it back to a brand or anybody that you're trying to target, and then being able to tag them is what's going to give you the most visibility, I think, anywhere. Everybody's concerned about sustainability today. What if I told you can take your pouches, labels, your single serve wrappers, and make them completely dissolve, make them completely disappear in water? That's what the team at SmartSolve has done. They've got a paper that is certified flushable. You can actually take the packaging, put it in the sink, put it in the shower, put it in the toilet, flush it. It dissolves completely into fibers. Learn more about SmartSolve. Go to smartsolve.com and ask for samples. Now, let's get back to the show.
So here's the one that's on every new designer, new graduate's mind, is that everyone keeps telling us that the job market is rough. And I promise we've been saying it to each other plenty. And it is across like all industries, especially with what happened over the past few years. But have you actually noticed a decline in new designers or junior designers getting hired? Or is it just that no designers are getting hired? Or is it just that, it's always been hard to get a job as a designer?
First off, it's never the perfect time to get hired as a designer. Nobody's graduating at the right moment in the market ever. There's always a reason to feel doubt. And it's always great. I guess it's always easy to say it's a really difficult market when you're not getting hired. Right. And then everybody kind of says it and it's like, okay, well, I'm not getting hired. So it's a rough market. But I'd say like back in 2008, we had like the huge a housing crisis, brands started to like downsize, agencies downsized. And what that means is a lot of young designers get pushed out. It's just the way that it goes. Then you also, then like the next stage of that is your more senior designers start getting pushed out. The mid-level ones stay because they can bump up and they can kind of work down and they can handle a lot more because they're trying to keep their jobs. In terms of the timing of the market and for a designer coming out of school right now, finding a job, I don't think it's impossible. I think people are definitely hiring, but people are hiring the right designer with the right set of tools. And it goes back to being profitable, right? So if the only thing that you're able to offer is a nice looking portfolio, there are people that have, unfortunately, 5 to 10 years of experience with an equally nice portfolio. So between the two, if we're just basing it on the work, we're probably going to hire somebody that has more experience. Because it is this tighter job market, senior level designers or more experienced designers are willing to take a little bit less money in order to secure a job, which makes it harder for a young designer that's coming in that would normally take the lesser money. So they're being then replaced by somebody that has more experience. So that part makes it difficult. My dogs agree. So I think the question is like, how do you get hired as a young designer coming out of school right now? One, it goes back to social, putting your work out there. I know there's a lot of people that feel, AIJ is completely against doing free work, doing comp work or any of that kind of stuff. I don't buy that. I wouldn't let anybody regulate what I do or don't do. So if I want to do free work, I'm going to do free work. It doesn't matter. AIJ doesn't pay my mortgage. Mm-hmm. I think as a creative, you have to kind of make those decisions on your own. Don't be swayed one way or another by one group or another group. I've seen a lot of people get hired just by creating work for social for brands that they like, right? So if you like Liquid Death, for example, like what would that look like if you redesigned it? There's AI tools that will help you do that much faster and posting it and getting noticed. Now, are you going to get hired for the AI work that you do? That's not necessarily the target, but it's about getting noticed and having people see the quality of work that you do. There's people that are doing free creative work for startups and offering, hey, I can do your branding for free if we create like some kind of social campaign around it, right? So you get noticed, they get a benefit. It's not going to pay your rent, but it will create more work. It will create more of a social recognition for you. There's a couple guys out there. I think there's a DJ out there on Instagram who does like the logo. He's the guy that, he'll go like this, and then I'll go like this, and then he'll create the logo on Instagram. I don't know if you've seen him or not, but
I don't think so. But I will look him up.
God, he's like exploding. He's doing like these design reels, and the amount of work that he's getting from the reels without being in an agency is insane, to the point where he can't keep up. There's a couple other guys that are doing something similar in like packaging, where they're taking brands, posting about it, like designing it, posting it, and they're getting a ton of freelance work, like more than they would if they, like they're getting paid more than they would if they were at an agency. So the opportunity right now to create your own position is completely in the hands of the creatives, where, like when I was trying to find a job as a young designer, there's no social media. There was like MySpace. So there wasn't an opportunity to like put stuff out there. So the fact that you can, is insane. So I think that's like one area that I would focus on, is like start putting stuff on social. And I know for a lot of young people today, like social isn't like where you want to be, but it's where all the old people are. And it's all where the old people that are hiring and have work are. So you need to be where you need to be seen.
So with that being said, is it even realistic for new and junior designers to get a job right out of the gate after graduating right now? And if not, what do we do? Do we move back in with our parents and work at Starbucks or?
Okay. So as an old guy, this is what I would tell my kids. I'd say move back in with your parents and get a job in design, whatever job it is, then post on social and start building your own business around design. You're going to learn how to interact with clients through social. You're going to get a thick skin because you're going to get a lot of hate, a lot of comments. I can't believe you're doing this. Your work is terrible, whatever. It'll help you kind of toughen up a little bit faster. But then when you do pick up new clients through social, I think you're going to get, you'll kind of get all of it, right? Like dealing with clients, billing, like invoicing. You're going to go through some pretty hard lessons throughout that whole freelance startup phase. But I think a lot of designers, like, you can create anything that you want. And today it's so easy to kind of build your own business. The idea of, I graduate, now I want to go work at Pentagram or, Landor, you pick the agency, or I want to go work at, you pick the brand, Tesla, whoever. That's not necessary. Like, you can just work for yourself and just like grow your own business from like day one. And that's the crazy part. So can you graduate last month and be working today? Absolutely. Now, I would tell anybody that's a student now to start posting. If you're a sophomore, if you're a junior, start posting your sketches, start posting your concepts. Look at some of these people that are posting daily and start doing something similar. I know there's James Martin, he posts and he does like these free lessons on how to design logos, how to sketch concepts. Okay, he does all this stuff. He gains so many clients. I think now he's part of Lincoln Design Co. because of all the work that he's done, right? And people don't see the work that you do unless you post it. So I think that's a big part, is like, start using social again.
So a lot of my friends right now are, this is not part of it, but a lot of my friends right now are like trying out to apply to jobs, and they don't know what to apply for, because right now, I don't know what it is, but right now there's a lot of like, those like Photoshop monkey positions where they just like come in and you just make like 5 things, whatever, and then those are the concepts. There's a lot of those, and a lot of my friends don't apply to them because they're like, oh, what is the point of applying to like that kind of low level job when I don't want to do it? But then they only apply for like high level jobs that they might not get. Yeah. So should I ask like the question?
No, I think this should definitely stay in the podcast.
Oh, it should? Okay.
Yeah, 1,000,000%, because that's exactly what's happening, right? That's the conversation. So, all right. So you're in school. So let me turn this around. Let me ask you, when someone's graduating, what do they expect to make in their first year? Like, realistically, in your mind, what's a first year salary that maybe you and your friends are talking about?
The problem is, a lot of my friends think that they'll make like 60, which I know is like the average, but personally, we paid a lot of money for our MS degree, and I don't think it should be 60. I think it should be closer to 70. I know that's unrealistic as a junior designer, but I feel like we should have a little bit of love for ourselves and at least call it 70. I don't know.
Okay. No, that's good. That's less than I thought you would say.
Oh, that's not for me. No, I think I should be getting even more, but but everyone else says 70. Well, everyone else says 60.
Right. No, perfect. No, I think I feel that, unfortunately, how much money somebody spent on their education really has no relevance to the business that's going to hire you.
Yeah.
Right. They don't care. Unfortunately, what they do care about is, are you a good designer? Can you solve X, and can you help me make a profit? So say someone feels like, okay, I need to go in and I need to start at 100. Okay, well, that's 100 grand for the year. If you're going to get insurance, that's going to be another, insurance and taxes. That's probably another 30 grand for the company to pay. Then you've got, the whatever additional benefits. So really, $100,000 employee is going to be somewhere like $130,000, $140,000 employee. So now let's say $10,000 a month. Is the work that you're going to do going to deliver $15,000 a month in billables for that particular agency or that team? Are they going to be able to profit off of this? And that's where, again, it's like they need to know from day one what you bring to the table. And that's where social, I think, comes in, is they'll know, okay, this person can do X, Y, Z, versus trying to find out after they've hired you. So I think that's the challenge. So a lot of times when you graduate, you don't necessarily know where you're going to go, and you don't necessarily know what you're going to get paid, because right now people are hiring more experienced designers for less. That puts pressure, downward pressure on what you can potentially make. Now, I've personally taken huge salary cuts to get a lower position at a place where I felt like I could grow, versus getting paid more at another place that I was kind of maxed out, like where I could go. Right? So you have to make those decisions. So could you take a position as a Photoshop monkey? I hate to call it that, but that's what people call it, or a pixel push or anything like that. But is there opportunities there? So does that get you in the door, and you give yourself 60 to 90 days to go, okay, like push your way up? And you can, in an interview, there's no problem to say, like, my goal is to come here, show you what I can do, and then potentially move up. And they might come back and say, you know what, we really just need somebody to push these pixels around. There's no opportunity for growth. And at least you got in the door. They know who you are. They know what you can do. And you can continue to sell yourself and say, okay, well, if you guys need help, here's my information. I can do this, and this for you guys. And you might pick up some freelance work from that. Right. The other thing too is you're going to get experience interviewing. So the more interviews you go on, the better you're going to be. So when it comes to potentially having the opportunity to work where you want to work, or get an interview where you want to go, you'll have had 10 or 15 interviews under your belt, versus that being your first one. Right. So you always have to kind of think about, like, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And what are my opportunities to get there? What are you and your friends talking about most? Like, what's the conversation happening?
Fear, mostly, because Pratt has like a massive international student body. And so a lot of them are worried about like getting their visa, which means they need a job like now. Not now, we have some time, but like one of my friends just got a job, and it is like don't mean it like that, but it's like a pixel pusher job. Like they kind of just put it to the grindstone, and she just pumps out like concepts. Mm-hmm. And so one big thing that she's talked about is that it's not the work is not fulfilling. And yeah, of course not, because you're not getting really to be a creative person. You're kind of just, slapping shapes on Illustrator, which I'm not, like, she's doing a good job, and it's necessary, and like it's still good work. But it can be hard when you come out of school where you had free reign to make the most psychotic packages ever, and now you're just making, like stuff that goes on a shelf at the checkout counter, which is hard.
That's the way it is.
And then there's, exactly. Yeah. Cause
no, that's
like everyone's first job.
That's the reality. You go through school, you can make anything you want. There's no parameters other than whatever's given to you by the teacher. There's no budget. There's no actual, can this really be made? So you don't go through that. And then once you get out into the real world, the challenge is, okay, well, now I need a position. Those positions for a young recent graduate are going to be in that space. They're going to be, all right, the team's already created this. Now we need to take this design and expand it across 3 different sizes, right? Like, you're moving stuff around. It's kind of like painting the fence in The Karate Kid. Very old movie. I think it was black and white. He's painting the fence in the parking lot, and he gets pissed and he's like, why am I painting the fence? This is so stupid. I'm not learning anything. And then, Mr. Miyagi punches him and he blocks it with his painting the fence movement. You have to get the reps in. You've got to get the reps in for creating these terrible designs. You've got to get the reps in for expanding, creative from one size to another size, like doing all this production stuff, because that's going to make you a better designer. It's going to make you understand the way that an agency works and the way that the work trickles down. You have to start somewhere, and nobody ever starts at the top, right? You always start at the bottom and you work your way up. So this is part of that. It's also an opportunity for you to then kind of show what you can do and embrace that, and ask the people that you're working with, like, learn from them. If you're typically in that position, you're usually going to be working closer with the manufacturer than with the creative and the client, with the directors and the clients. So learn from the manufacturers, ask questions, like really kind of build out that foundation, and then you can grow from there. And if you really kind of focus in on that particular position and learning as much as you can there, versus what happens a lot where people are like, this is not fulfilling. I'm just going to go in, I'm going to clock in, clock out, do what's needed, and I'm going to keep looking for work. You're never going to really build that foundation, and you're going to take all these little jobs until you kind of move up. You'll move up faster if you can build that out quicker and have more experience to show. All those pieces build portfolio pieces, even if it's not that you created the visual, right? I did the production on this. I was able to take these dimensions to these dimensions, or whatever it is that you're doing, because some other agency is going to need that and have somebody that has the experience to do that. Now you can transition that to another position that's a little bit higher than that one, kind of work your way up. And working in retail, it's funny because I work with a lot of people that are junior designers in, I don't know, let's say that they're at Ralph Lauren today. Then by like Christmas, they're going to be a mid-level designer at Tory Burch, because people bounce around, right? And it's like, I took what I learned here. Now I'm going to go here and I'm kind of move up a little bit. And now within 2 years, they're an art director at or whoever. And it's like, you're just kind of working your way up, and you're really focusing your time while you're at that position to learn everything you possibly can at that position and below, right? So manufacturing, production, file management, like everything you possibly can. Then you take that and you apply that somewhere else. But if you're going, man, this sucks, I'm not fulfilled, that's kind of on each person. It's on you to find the fulfillment. It's not the job's position to fulfill you. It's like, how can I make this where I keep learning? What didn't I learn in school? What can I apply here? And then documenting and sharing on social, not what you're doing at work, but kind of your own stuff on the side. All right. So Grace, what's your goal for the rest of the year, right? It's July. Where do you think you're going to be by December?
What a terrifying question. December. So currently I am aggressively applying to any and every job, but at the same time, I'm trying to build like a network, which I know sounds very vague, but I'm trying to like talk to more people in the design space, and I'm terrible at it. I hate doing it. But so right now I'm just trying to make new friends that are also designers.
Yeah.
And try to find like more freelance stuff. But I'm not really sure, because I think I'm spoiled in the sense that like I really am terrible at all the jobs that I'm not interested in. Wow, I'm selling myself really well here. But like I'm not the most like efficient person at Photoshop. I won't be able to like crank out like 15 designs in a second. But I think I have my sights set too high, if I'm being totally honest. Like I want to work at like these weirdo places like Think Packaging, where they make, wacky stuff with just cardboard, or like things like that, or like experiential design, or all of the like influencer packaging and stuff like that. I'd want to work with like crazy stuff that usually isn't sustainable, but like for that kind of thing, which is not a great thing for a junior to be saying, because I'm basically coming in and being like, I want to work with I forget his name, but like the director at Think Packaging. Like no one's gonna put me there.
Why not? Why not? I'll
yeah, you know what? Good point, actually. Yeah, can you give him a call?
Yeah, well, I'll send him a message. Would you move to New Zealand?
Absolutely, actually, yeah.
All right.
But yeah,
I think. All right. So here's what we're doing. I'm looking at your LinkedIn.
Yes.
Okay. So
it is barren.
Here's your homework. Yeah, here's your homework, and I think every design student out there, whether you're in school or you've just graduated, this is for you. I'm looking at your LinkedIn page. It has your profile pic. It's got the hashtag open to work. I would remove open to work, one, even though it feels like it's telling people that you're open to work. It's also telling people you're unemployed. So nobody wants to eat in an empty restaurant, right? People want to go like, oh, this restaurant's popping. I'm going to go eat there. So you need to look busy. 2, I would get a new profile photo. Okay.
Oh yeah.
You look completely different. So we would update that. Then your banner at the top is empty. So that's a great place. It's a big billboard basically. So as a creative, what kind of work do you want to do? And put it up there. Now that doesn't mean to put pictures of some of the things in your portfolio, but like maybe show an example of like one product, and then off to the right having for, if you'd have to figure out the copy, but it's like, if you're a startup and you want packaging design, contact me at blah, blah, blah. Like have that in there because it's a billboard. So what does a billboard do? It communicates your offering to the right consumer in terms of like what they're looking for. So how do you match those two things up? Use that. Then we've got Grace Lee, perfect. Designer with experience in packaging, structural and graphic design, and branding identities across multiple industries. Let's replace that with, what do you do? Right? What will you do for me? So if I'm a brand and I need packaging, what will you do? I don't know. Take a look at, I'm trying to think, Chris Do. I think he does Chris Do of the Future. You can check him out. I think he does a whole section on what to do in that space. But it's something like, it can be something like, I make communicating your brand through packaging easy. I could like really make it clear for somebody to understand, like, that is looking for packaging. Oh, this is the right person to do that. Then your connections, LinkedIn allows you to send out, I think, like 100 connection requests a week.
Oh my gosh.
Put down a list of the top brands that you want to work with, the top agencies that you want to connect with, and go to that agency, go to that brand, and go down the list of creatives, designers, click all their names, and send out a connection request to all of them. You don't have to say anything. You can just send the connection request. You don't have to send a note with each one. The goal is to build your network, right? And just focus on creative. If there's brands that you want to work with, if there's startups that you want to work with, look for the founders, reach out to them after you've kind of built out the rest of your LinkedIn. It talks, it says like, Grace has experience in packaging, graphic, blah, blah, blah. I would follow the same idea as like the title areas. Like, what do you deliver? What are you doing for, what would you do for me? Right. So I can take product from idea to this, and, I don't know, kind of figure out like what it is that you deliver in maybe 3 sentences, like make it super, super short. Have a website that people go to, right? Have a link to your web. Do you have a web portfolio?
I do. Is it not in there? I thought LinkedIn had that.
I don't see it. Yeah. So I don't see it in there. I see that you do, you've got experience in Rhino, but I don't see any examples of it.
What? Yeah, I will definitely fix it. I know there's like a section in the LinkedIn portfolio, like where you edit your portfolio, where you put your website, and I definitely put it in there, but I have no idea why it's not showing up.
Yeah, so don't see it in there.
That's concerning.
But yeah, put it where people
right
can go, where it says independent designer. Put that can be a link to your website also. But more than anything, you have to think, like, you have to remove any kind of friction that's happening, right? Because right now, if somebody clicks on independent designer, it takes you to everybody that does independent design. So it can be somebody in India that does cinematography, somebody in South America that does like quilting, like it just super random. Anybody that's an independent designer kind of goes all to the same place. So making it less friction for people to see what you do. So really, if they click on Grace Lee, they should know everything about you, what you can do, the kind of design that you've done. And then also like spending, if you're starting to look for work, I spend like an hour on LinkedIn a day. I'd say spend an hour on LinkedIn a day, go through creatives, different brands, comment, like, build that network. By the end of, in the next 4 weeks, you should have 500 to 600 connections. Like that should be your goal. Mm-hmm. But you also have to be posting once or twice a day your designs, your concepts. You can go to, if there's a new company that does a rebrand or redesign, take that image of the new redesign and the old design and post it and give your commentary on it. What do you think? Does this work? Does it not work? Why doesn't it work? It doesn't always have to be positive. You can critique. It's fine. I think people kind of enjoy reading that more and getting like a realistic impression of what the design is versus everybody patting themselves on the back. That's the goal, I think, for you or for anybody out there that's looking for work and are studying design, are halfway through school, whether they're in their bachelor's or their master's program. Like, you have to have a full LinkedIn profile that you're interacting with daily, right? You don't want to wait until you graduate to start building a network. You need to have a network before you graduate. I
will spend the rest of the day on LinkedIn, I promise.
Perfect. All right, so that's it for the episode. If you guys have any questions, leave it in the comments. If you want to hear more from Grace and I, then let us know, and we can do a follow-up episode for designers and young, students that are coming out of school. What do you think, Grace? Does that sound good?
Oh yeah, definitely. I have been your host, Grace Lee, with my wonderful guest, Evelio Mattos.
Awesome. All right, perfect.